with 1 e4, and Levon playing for the Triveni Continental Kings goes for e5. We have knight f3, knight c6, and will Vishy go for his favorite Ruy Lopez? Yes, he does. Bishop b5, a6 played. Vishy goes bishop a4, knight f6. Ruy Lopez is an opening that Anand has played for many years now. He's one of the world's foremost experts in this opening. And Levon goes for the more active bishop development on c5. c3 played, d6, and now Anand taking a bit of time and moves d4. Hits the bishop. Generally, you mustn't take on d4, and that's what Levon does. He keeps the tension in the center and gets his bishop here. Now bishop comes out. Remember, you can never take this pawn because this is a double attack. So that's the reason why he goes bishop g4, pins the knight. Vishy goes knight d2. Here's an interesting variation. If you try to win the central pawn, I take here, give you a check, and then pick up your bishop. So that's not possible. He castles. Vishy pushes the bishop away, and generally you don't want to take here and give up your bishop pair. So he moves his bishop back, keeping the pin in the position. Levon is well prepared. So is Vishy Anand. He takes in the center. Pawn takes. So now the center is sort of equal. Both sides have equal space. He takes on b6. Pawn takes. And Vishy brings his queen up the board. Queen e2. And Levon Aronian also connects his rooks. The only advantage that white has in this position is the fact that his pawn structure is better, but also what Vishy is saying that Levon, your bishop here on g6 is totally misplaced. And that's what he's going to do. He moves his knight. He's not going to take this bishop very quickly. He will put his pawn, creating a huge barrier against the black bishop. f3, there you can see it. Vishy is also ready to give up his bishop here, which Levon simply takes. But on the other hand, he just says that black bishop is very passive. Now the knight moves away, and Vishy plays his pawn up to b4. So slightly better position for Vishy Anand, and maybe a very clear plan that comes to mind is moving the rook, getting the knight here, and plonking it in the center. So knight comes to f8. Levon says, I am also looking at your weak squares. Vishy moves his knight back to f1, and Levon comes in. If the knight jumps to f4, it would be very powerful, and so Vishy stops it with his knight, but Levon goes in. Now this is not a good idea, because after takes, pawn takes, yes, you have stopped the knight from coming up, but your bishop is worse, and now Vishy takes here. Now you can't take with the rook because your pawn here is hanging, and so he takes with the queen. Now what Anand can do is double up on the d file, enter here, and start hassling the queenside pawns. But he goes queen d2. Interesting decision. He's ready for the queen trade, but Levon is not. And now Vishy takes the open d file. Oh, h5, what a big blunder by Levon Aronian. Takes, and look at him shaking his head. The main problem is that if you take here, he missed that the rook and the bishop both would be hanging. There you see Vishy now taking a sip of water. He knows that this game is really in his bag now. What a big blunder by Levon. He has to go back. It's not only a question of losing a pawn. Suddenly his bishop is very passive. And now let's see how Vishy's technique is. He goes in with the queen, exchanges. Rook comes here. Levon is very quick. He is generally poker faced, but this time he couldn't maintain it. He was so unhappy with his blunder. And Vishy sacrifices a pawn there to keep the bishop closed. What a smart decision, and now stopping the rook also from entering into the position. Brilliant play. King comes up, and now Vishy can simply chop off the pawn here. On a6, oh, he gets his knight up to the board. And maybe next move the knight comes here or to c5. The bishop is actually very passive. In fact, this endgame is also lost if you just take here. But Vishy says, I'll keep the rooks on the board because my rook is more active. The king is pushed back, and it's time for the knight to come up the board and come from b3 to d4. He does that. Levon now wants to win this pawn. The knight jumps to the center. Very difficult endgame here. Levon wins a pawn and Vishy now moves in. This pawn on g7 is hanging. King comes to h8. And there are many ways to win this, but Vishy chooses the most safe route. He's now a pawn up and all he has to do is maintain control. h4 is a very smart move because if you take the pawn, I give you a check here, you block and I give you a check and I win your rook. So that does not work. He went bishop g8, Vishy pushes the pawn, king comes up. Now complete control. And Vishy actually was going to move his rook to d7, which is also fine, and he moves it. He plays his rook to d7. Levon attacks the rook. You need to figure a way to make progress. And this is one thing that inexperienced players do have trouble. How to convert a winning position. But a player like Anand is generally very calm. He is not in a hurry. He is actually bringing his king slowly into the position. There you have it. King coming in slowly and steadily. He plays his bishop here, attacking the pawn. A very good move is actually to take the bishop, but Vishy says, I'm not interested in that bishop. He goes king g5. But now Levon gets some chances by taking the pawn on f3. Yes, he takes it. And you can either take on f5 here. Yes, he does it. He takes here. White still under control, but black has some chances to hold this. King e5 and the rook comes to f6. Maybe not the best move, and there you see Vishy finding another classy move, attacking the g7 pawn. Bishop comes here and he takes the pawn on g7. Rook comes in and now a check. King goes back. If you had taken the knight, then rook g6 and you would lose the bishop. So that's the reason why king h7, pawn up to h6, and now he takes on a6, goes back and he comes with his rook. Rook to h3 and king comes back. Now you can see how Anand has everything under control. He is 2 pawns up and he's going to calmly convert it. First a check, king goes back, another check, and there you have it. The knight comes up and the king moves forward. Knight e6, rook check, king goes up, and now this is going to be done. King up, he moves his rook, check. You can take the pawn, but now the rook trade is going to happen. If you trade the rooks, you would lose the pawn, but anyway you are losing the pawn, and now with 2 extra pawns, this is not going to be at all difficult for Vishy Anand. He is converting this against Levon Aronian. What a tournament Vishy is having here. He first beat Duda in round number 1. Then he did lose to Magnus. He drew against Nepo. And then he managed to beat another 2 top players. He goes here, pushes the pawn. And now the knight jumps in. Vishy has scored 3 wins in this tournament against the best in the world. And he brings his king up. Push. And finally the last pawn push, and with that Vishy Anand is taking this one home. You can see Levon thinking for one final time before he gives up. Yes, he's resigned there. Vishy Anand